Hi, this is Dee, and you're listening to my podcast, Let Me Clear My Throat. On today's episode, we are going to talk about depression. Um, Before we get into that, though, I just want to mention that I do have, I don't know exactly where you're listening to this at, but I do have a Podbean podcast, which is what I'm recording this to, and then I share it to my YouTube channel. Um, but as I've mentioned before in my other podcasts, I am working on doing the video. I tried to do it the last time, and it was one of those things. I don't know if you, I don't know, probably tell my age here. We used to watch Friday night Kung Fu back in the day, and the mouth never matched the voice. It was like one or the other was trying to catch up to the other one, and that's kind of what my video was looking like. So I was like, no, we're not going to do that because it confuses me even to pre-watch it. So I'm working on that. Um, so until then, we're going to do it this way. But feel free to listen to my other podcast. And if you have any suggestions, by all means, please let me know. I'm all open ears for any respectful criticism. I try to share as much information as possible. Um, Sometimes I just free kind of mic it, and sometimes I do research. I print out some information and I try to do my citations and stuff. Obviously, out of respect to give credit to where credit is due. And sometimes I do both. But this one, I am going to once again do a little bit of both. Depression is something that I am all too familiar with. I am severely manic depressive, and I've mentioned this in my a couple of my other podcasts. I've also got bipolar, PTSD, OCD, and a few other things going on. But it's people might think, oh, okay, you're depressed, you're sad, or whatever. And depression goes a lot further than just being sad. It really does. And I think a lot of times it's misunderstood. And a lot of times I feel like it is judged. It's very much judged. And people think it's just a matter of you need to get over it and get on. And it's, believe me, it's easier said than done that way. I wish it was that easy. But hopefully, in this episode, I'm going to read some information that I got from psychcentral.com. If you haven't been to that website, please do so. They have a lot of nice information on there. Here lately, I've been getting a lot of my information from their site, just trying to go over some general things, obviously, that are very important for people. And if you're going through something like this, hopefully it can help you and maybe um, make you feel like you're not alone. So, and if you are going through something like this, and you're struggling with just survival of your own well-being and your own mentality of being in your own world, in your own head, sometimes we feel like a prisoner in our own minds. Um, Please reach out to somebody if possible. And I know, like I've said this before, when you get in that state of mind, it's not that easy to do. Having a go-to person to call, or feeling like you will be strong enough to reach out to a helpline or whatever, that is not always easy and not always the case to do. And sometimes having a game plan, this is what I have done. I've been trying to teach myself to have a game plan prior to, if possible, and have backup game plans, if you will, because sometimes depending on what episode of a moment that you're having or experiencing also determines on what kind of coping mechanism will help to work. And sometimes what works at one moment will not work at another moment. So trying to have different things, and being honest with yourself, and being straight up honest with yourself about what you're trying to do to better yourself. And just also know that you are human. You're going to make mistakes. And sometimes you may have setbacks. But that does not mean that you're a bad person. That does not mean that you cannot regroup and you know yourself. And it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going backwards. Sometimes going back and retracing our steps help us to give a more positive and realistic direction, I believe. Because you have to, if you're not honest with yourself on your emotions and what you can cope with and what you can't, and what are good coping skills for you, because if you're being fake with yourself and unrealistic on what um, methods you can do that actually help you. Okay, I had to take a break there for a second, and I know you would not know that. So trying to remember exactly where I left off. In case you are not aware and are familiar with my podcast, I actually live and take care of my mother. My mother is blind and disabled and bedridden, basically. So she needed me. She has this little um, button that she rings when she needs me. And so that went off. I don't know if you could hear it in the background. So I had to stop for a minute to go take care of her. I don't remember exactly verbatim what I was talking about, but I know in a ballpark figure about what I was discussing. And that was pretty much being honest with yourself when you're trying to do coping mechanisms. And being honest with yourself on what you can handle and what is realistic for you to be able to do. So, what might work for one person might not necessarily work for you. And that's okay because you are your own individual. But, and if you try a mechanism or a tactic and it doesn't work for you, like I said, try to have a backup plan on something else. And have a variety of them if you can. Research some different coping mechanisms. Um, I know, like the other day, I had two episodes on different days, and I know, like day before yesterday, we had really bad storms that went through here, and I, I mean, the storms that I wasn't having a moment because of the storms per se, but I just remember that night because I had to open the window up to get some air to try to breathe and to breathe through my anxiety panic attack that I was having. And I had to do some calming techniques with myself and calming words and things with me that I have to talk myself through. And a couple of days before that, I was crying very uncontrollably. I was very upset, very high into my emotions. And I had to try different variety of coping mechanisms because um, what normally had worked in the past wasn't working at that moment. And so I had to do a little switch up on some of them, and I have to talk myself through it. And I've said this before, um, I am a surviving suicidal victim, and I am a surviving self harm victim, um, among other things. And I have the scars all over my body, especially up and down my arms, to prove it. Not that I need to prove it, but I'm just saying I have scars. My daughter says it looks like I have chemical burns because of the way they look. But dealing with coping mechanisms and things to try to help work through things, my anxiety would get so bad that I was a picker. Some people are cutters, some are pickers, some are burners. I was a picker, and I would subconsciously just pick at my arms, at my face, my chest, just, and I wouldn't even realize I was doing it. And it got really bad to the point where I had to wrap my arms up in ace bandages to try to get myself to teach myself to stop picking and to try to control it. There'd be times where I would start picking my chest, and my whole complete chest would be one big bruise. From where I was just, and I wasn't getting anywhere with it. I was just pinching it, and I've gotten to the point where it got to the point sometimes too that I would self harm myself. I would punch myself in the head. I'd punch myself in the face. I would hit myself. I'd bang my head. Um, I would call myself names. I would do a variety of things. I was looking up ways to end my pain, um, to kill myself. I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. And I've said it before in a couple other podcasts. I was even looking up ways to inject rubbing alcohol. I was just looking up different things. I had made a variety of different pill concoctions and a few other things, but through um, the grace of God And whatever He's putting into my path of my journey here, um, whatever it was, has saved my life. And I am at a moment um, in my life. I'm in a moment, not a day. Instead of being in a moment in the day, I'm in a moment in my life. And for the first time in my life, I can honestly say I want to live. And that's a big deal for me. And but there's some times that it gets very overwhelming that I don't know how I'm going to calm myself down. I will talk myself through it, and I have come to, and I've said this before on my other podcast too. Um, the part of me that wanted to harm me, the part of me that is a surviving victim, um, is the same part of me that I'm trying to heal. And I'm trying to teach myself to redirect myself, but in a positive manner. And so I have to be realistic with that version of me. And so I would talk to that part of me, and maybe that's to some people may sound real, funny, and crazy, and um, like I have a mental. I mean, I do have. I mean, I do have mental problems, but we all do. I mean, who really is normal? What is normal? Because everybody's got something going on. We really all do, in my opinion. But at the same time, I would lay there, and that sometimes, like before, my trauma personality, if you will, the part of me that was hurting so bad, instead of beating myself in the head and hurting myself, um, I would take my hand and I would squeeze my blanket like a stress ball. And I sometimes I would tremble, sometimes I would have seizures. And I'd cry so hard that I would make myself sick. I felt like I was going to throw up. I wouldn't be like heaving, but um, I would get it to that level of uncontrollable um, anxiety. Like I had to do something to break it, and I say break it. I had to break it somehow to calm down without hurting me. And so I would lay there in the bed and I would try to talk myself through it. I would try to breathe myself through it. And if that doesn't work, I mean, one time I even got up and I thought to myself, okay, laying here is not going to accomplish it. We're obviously at a point in this particular attack that I'm going to have to take a different measure. And laying here like this is not going to do me any good. So I have to get a change of scenery. So I actually physically got up out of bed. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning ish, and I went outside. And I stood on the porch and I took some breaths and tried to redirect myself and calm myself down the best I could. And came back in and went to bed. I pray a lot. I um, I put a lot in God's hands, but I also have to remind myself that God gave me two hands for a reason as well. And sometimes I have to use those resources to in order to be resourceful. And harming myself with them is not the realistic way to go. And when it gets to that point, I need to take alternate routes and try to have enough faith in myself um, that um, that I'll survive it, and have enough faith in myself that I can work through it. And when I can't, I pray very hardly um, that I can handle the that moment at that time. I sometimes you can have a big map planned out and everything, and got and you know the world just says, life says, hey, we got a different plan for you because this ain't working. And sometimes you have to trust yourself, um, but that comes with a lot of honesty, because being honest with yourself and trusting yourself need to kind of go together. But they're not always in the same category, if that makes any sense. Because sometimes you say you trust yourself or you don't trust yourself, but then you're not probably being honest with yourself either. Because I, right now, as of right now, I trust myself, and I'm working on believing in myself. And that in itself is a huge accomplishment. And going through things, obviously, watching my mom go through what she goes through, being through some of the trauma, things that I have been going through and have went through. I just lost my dad a couple of years ago, and that's when I started taking care of my mom. But I've also lost my grandson to a tragedy, among many other people in my life that were near and dear to me. I've been through quite a bit. I've even said, I could probably write a book about my life, honestly. It's so funny. I asked my mom the other day, I said, we could probably make a movie out of my life. And this is probably gonna tell my age soon. And those who know who this person is, I'm gonna say, just note that when my mom said this, it, I still laugh about it, but it took me a long time not to laugh anymore because it was so funny. But, but I said, they could probably make a movie out of me. And I said, who do you think should play me? And without batting an eye and missing a beat, she said, Phyllis Diller. And I said, well, for one, Phyllis Diller has passed away. But I said, really, Phyllis Diller? This is where you went, Phyllis Diller? Um, and I cracked up laughing. It was so funny. And I told her, I said, well, you remind me of Estelle Getty. And I said, so the Ma from Golden Girls. I said, I could see her playing you. I mean, obviously she is also passed away, but I just looked at her like, really, Phyllis Diller. I mean, jeez. So anyway, but different things happen in people's lives, and different things um, are not always the same, even if the emotion behind it is the same. And I have got to the point where when before, I used to always say, oh, I understand, or I can understand that. People are like, no, you don't understand, you're not me. And you know what, I had to stop and really think about that and realize you're correct. I'm not you any more than you are me. And I cannot expect somebody to understand me and where I'm at because they're not me. And even if we have the exact same identical situation, who we are and how we handle things are not the same. So what would work for one person might not work for another. And that in itself is a lot to carry. But when you have people in the background that think you should just get over it, or you're just sad, or they're judgmental, or whatever the case may be, um, those are people that are not being honest with themselves, or have not dealt with the level of emotion that you are going through. And I have gotten to the point of saying, instead of saying, yes, I understand how you feel, I say, yes, I understand that emotion. Because while I don't understand how you feel, I understand the emotion behind that feeling. And sometimes it is that simple to be that deep for me. But when you are faced with depression, and this is all me talking, I haven't even read this paper yet. Um, but when you are faced with depression, it's a whole different ballgame on top of everything else. And coming back to this article that I found on psychcentral.com, which I will go over, and we're going to go over it together because I've not read it yet. Um, it has some things listed on here that may be beneficial for some people. So it doesn't hurt to touch base on it and see where we come out at. So according to psychcentral.com, there was an article written, Effects of Untreated Depression and What to Look for. And it is by Connor Rice and Sandra, I hope I don't butcher her name, Casablanca. Oh, okay, half of the letter was cut off. Casablanca. On March 23rd, 2021. And it says, fatigue, irritability, hopelessness, and pains and aches are all effects of depression. They can be managed, though. The effects of depression can be physical, mental, and emotional. The condition isn't about feeling sad or down, not trying hard enough, or something you can put on hold at will. You can't just put it down just to say, "Oh, I'm gonna put this down," because if it was that easy, this thing wouldn't even be a thing. Depression is a mental health condition that affects all aspects of your life. Symptoms of clinical depression usually last 2 weeks or more, and they can go on for years in some cases. This is very true. You may also sorry, let me start over. You may also have some bad depression days, and on other days, you may feel like you can manage. This is natural. Regardless of how you live with depression and its effects, help is available and can improve your quality of life. But what happens when depression goes untreated? This is what has been happening to me, and um, I have started mental counseling, as long as physical therapy, and I've been also seeing a doctor who has prescribed me some medication. And I've been getting migraines real bad, so she has also put me on some medication for that. I used to get migraines real bad all the time. So it is very important to get your mental health in check, because your mental health is just as important as um, your physical well-being. I mean, it is, and a lot of times I have had a doctor tell me that, when somebody is depressed and going through things, it does numbers to your physical well-being as well, and it goes at your weakest spots first, because they are the most vulnerable, and it does take a toll on you. It really does in so many ways. So it's just as important to have your mental health in check. Physical effects of depression. Huh? Go figure. Let's see what it says. Despite being a mental health condition, depression can still affect the rest of your body. Physical effects of depression usually appear progressively and sometimes for no obvious reason. At first, you might not even associate your physical symptoms with how you feel. When you have depression, you may begin feeling very tired, even after a good night's sleep. You can also experience aches and pains without any apparent cause. For example, you might feel as if you're coming down with the flu, but you never get flu symptoms beyond fatigue and body aches. Depression might also affect your sexual life, decreasing your libido or sexual performance. Sometimes you won't feel interested at all. Other times you feel too tired to even engage. And this alone can have a very mental effect on you, because it affects your partner. And then your partner doesn't understand all the time. And then it causes a big, huge other effect altogether. And then you feel inadequate and um, just not able to um, be yourself. And then you feel like something's wrong with you in that end. And, it gives you, whether you're a male or a female, it gives you a dysfunction. And it makes things more complicated on top of everything else that you're going through. These are some of the most common effects of depression on your body: chronic pain, chronic inflammation, headaches or migraines, cramps, constipation or diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, chronic fatigue that doesn't go away after resting, changes in sleep patterns, changes in weight, changes in appetite, decreased sex drive or pain during sex, increased chance of autoimmune disorders. Depression can also increase your chance of developing physical conditions. For example, 2014 literature suggests a review suggested that depression is linked to a significantly greater chance of myocardial infarction and coronary heart disease. One of the greatest challenges with the physical effects of depression is that they, in turn, might make your other symptoms worse. For example, might not able to sleep can lead to more aches and pains. Also, too, if you don't get your sleep in, your body cannot rest. And if your body cannot rest and you're not getting adequate sleep, your mind cannot rest. And if your mind needs to be rested, because then it can get delirious. You can hallucinate. You can have um, psychological effects and stuff that changes due to you could be forgetful. It's just a variety of things, because your mind needs to rest just as much as your body. And sometimes and if you're like me, my mind doesn't go to bed, but my
body is saying, "Hey, I done laid down a long time ago, and I'm done ready to go to sleep." But my mind wants to stay up and play because they're not on the same page. One of the greatest challenges with physical effects of depression is that they, in turn, might make your other symptoms worse. Um, Not being able to sleep can also lead to more aches and pains. Psychological effects of depression. The effects of depression on the brain can in turn affect your emotional well being. This not only includes your favorite activities and your job, but also your personal and professional relationships and activities. When you live with untreated depression, you may notice your productivity declining. This could affect you at work or school, even if you have high functioning depression. So you might be more apt to not be wanting to be active in life. You know, things that you normally love to do and people you normally love to talk to, whatever. You just have no desire, and it's nothing to do with them or the activity per se. It's just you just have no drive to do it. Um, and sometimes even opening your eyes and getting out of bed is the biggest challenge. Taking a shower is a big challenge. There's a lot of things that I know from past experience that has overcome me. I have talked about before where I actually slept 5 days in a row. I made myself sleep 5 days in a row because I didn't want to do what I didn't want to do. And I was trying to be a responsible suicidal victim, if that makes any sense to anybody. I didn't want to harm myself. I just didn't know how to cope with my pain. And it got so overwhelming that I didn't have anywhere to put it. And I didn't want to put it on me in a deadly manner. So I was fighting for my life. I really was. And I wasn't even in the right state of mind to even comprehend that at the time all the way. And it's a darkness. It really is a darkness. Um, so it goes on to say you could also experience the effects of depression on attention and memory performance. It might be difficult for you to recall newly learned information, for example. Untreated depression might um, also lead you to isolation. You may feel lonely or like staying home more often and start passing on gatherings with family, close friends, or family. Keeping up with social connections could make you feel overwhelmed and drained. I used to go to this karaoke place, and I had been going there since the beginning of time, I feel like. And I knew everybody in there, and it was like cheers to me. You know, I walk in and they're like, hey, D. But there was a time where I was trying to get back out into the world and working through my depression and things that I was coping with in my trauma. And I walked in there, it was so overwhelming. It was so overwhelming. I couldn't handle all the people in there and all the activities that were going on. It was just so much. And I kept getting up and I'd walk out to the door and I'd start to get my car to leave and I'd go back in. And I did this repeatedly. And one of my very, very close, dear friends of mine, Dawn, she looked over at me and she said, come here, sit down next to me. And she patted the seat. She said, sit down next to me. You'll be okay. And I looked at her and I'm like, okay. And I sat there and I wasn't me like I normally is or normally was. But I eventually calmed down enough where I could actually talk and interact with people. But I stayed in my seat. And if anybody knows me and I'm sitting down and I'm not up moving or talking or I'm a social bug, or if I'm not dancing because I'm big on dancing, if I'm not doing that and I'm sitting down, something's going on with me. Something's wrong, or I'm just not feeling it. But I actually sat there and um, spoke to my friends who were sitting there, and I worked through the moment. And Dawn sat next to me the whole night and was very supportive and helpful of me. And that was a huge deal for me. And even now, with taking care of my mom, I haven't really been out in society in a long time because I am with my mom 24/7. I have no outside help from family and friends. Um, I don't have anybody over. I don't go anywhere. I don't talk to anybody to amount to much at all. Um, but I've been trying to do stuff to occupy my time while my mom, she is basically, she's confined to her bed. So, in this big old house by myself, basically, outside of taking care of my mom. So I do a lot of, I'm an artist, so I do a lot of crafting and artwork. And I also started doing my podcast. And I've also been working on a couple other things as well. And I also have an organization that I've been building. I have a Facebook page on it. I help the homeless a lot, and I provide resources and stuff for people because I was homeless for 2.5 years, and I'm very passionate about it. And I am extremely passionate about the military and veterans. And I have a lot to say when I get started on that one. So I do this to try to occupy myself and try to have an outlet because I have learned um, some of my coping mechanisms, and I've said this to my mother, of course, going through what she's been going through, but it's really difficult for her because she is confined to bed and she is blind, so her limitations are very more severe than what mine were because I am mobile, and I can see, but and I'm not codependent on taking on my well-being, um, but when I was going, and I still do this actually, and my and then to some people, I hope this makes sense to you, and I have learned this the hard way in my journey. But three things that I learned very importantly, and this kind of goes with the subject, even though it's not on this paper, because a lot of times, honestly, just being able to talk and have life realistic experiences goes far more greater than a piece of paper. Although there's great information on here and I'm going to continue reading it, but being able to relate to life as a human being is very vital. Human contact is very vital. And I unfortunately don't have a lot of that. So, but three things that I learned, um, you have to try to try. And I say this because when you get depressed and you stay in bed or you don't even want to open your eyes, you have to try to open your eyes. You have to try to get out of bed. You have to try to take a shower. And you might not be able to do all of them at once. Do one at a time. And even if you just open your eyes but you don't get out of bed, you tried. And sometimes you have to try to try. Maybe you'll get up, you'll open your eyes, you'll get out of bed, and you'll walk downstairs maybe or in the other room. And then maybe eventually, about a half hour later, you might end up right back in bed. You tried to try. And that's okay. You accomplished that far. Baby steps. Because, and sometimes you have to try to try to try. And that may sound crazy, but it's true. It really is. For me, it was. Because if you don't try, then you're not going to have, you're not going to get anywhere. And if you don't get anywhere, then that depression is going to consume you. And that's not a, you will be confined in your bed or in your head or wherever else you put yourself, whether intentionally or not. Um, but eventually, when you try enough, eventually you'll succeed, at least at one thing at a time, and be honest with yourself about it. Don't overwhelm don't overwhelm yourself with realistic methods and things to do. And even if you sit down and do a game plan, that is trying to cope with what you're going through. And when you do those coping mechanisms, you're not only trying to try, you're doing. And that's great. That is great just in itself. Even if nobody understands that. My daughter used to come up to me and she'd be like, Mom, you need to get out of bed. Mom, you've been in bed for 5 days. Mom, you need to eat something. You haven't ate. Mom, I'm applying for you a part-time job. Which position sounds the best for you? This will at least get you out of the house a little bit, but it's only part-time, so it's not going to be too overwhelming. This is what my daughter did for me. And she was a huge lifesaver. I'm so blessed to have her in my life. Honestly, I don't know where I would be today without her. I probably would not be here, actually, honestly. But the second thing is to breathe. You got to learn to breathe. Um, Breathing normal air is a positive plus. But when your own breath suffocates you, that's a whole different ballgame. And sometimes you have to just remember to breathe through your anxiety, breathe through your episodes, coping mechanism breathing, but not too fast or you'll hyperventilate and you'll overwhelm yourself. Breathing is very important to calm yourself. Third and far most important, I wish I knew in the beginning, but understand now, I guess, at this day and time of why I didn't, because it is something I had to learn. Find a place to put your feelings, a positive place to put your feelings. I put my feelings in a lot of negative places, and that was not keeping me alive. It was killing me. And I had to um, redirect myself. Um, and like I said, from the grace of God and whatever was put in my journey, has been a big, huge plus for me. Um, Regardless of what it may be or how it was, I don't know. All I know is where I'm at now, and that's okay. Sometimes in life you don't always understand. Sometimes you just need to remember to say thank you and just count your blessings. But you also have to remember that you are a blessing. And that when you're in depression and having your moments in whatever state of mind you're going through, that is very difficult to wrap your head around. No pun intended. It really is. Um, but find a place to put your feelings. Have an outlet. And that's what breaks my heart with my mom because she has no outlet. My mom used to be a songwriter. She actually published a song once when I was a kid. She used to play guitar and a keyboard, and she has several songs. She has a reel to reel tape if people know what that is, and we're about probably the same around age group, um, or at least familiar with that generation. Um, but my mom had a lot of songs that she wrote. My dad was also he was from West Virginia hillbilly. A lot of picking going on in the house. My uncle was also a musician. I wrote music and sang, played the harmonica. Very musically inclined family. Um, my younger sister and I, we both, sing. I love to dance. My sister also plays, I think, keyboard. I probably could get down on the drums. I probably could. But my mom is stuck in her bed, and her only thing is an audiobook. She lives in audiobooks, and day in, day out, all day long, audiobooks. And she is in her head. She's in her emotions. She's in a very big depression. She's on three anxiety pills, and they just actually upped the dose of one of them. Um, on top of the rest of her physical handicap attributes that she's got going on, and the depression is just eating at her, mentally, physically, emotionally, um, and it's not only heartbreaking to watch, but it's also heartbreaking to know the emotion behind that level. And I try to do everything I can to keep myself in check the best I can. So my mom has me as a backup plan if she needs it. But those are three very important things that I have learned. And I also write poetry. Um, and I like I said, I probably could write a book about my stuff. I've always been good at writing. I could write it when I was in college. I could write a book report in a day, hands down, and get a 100 on it. And I'm not saying I'm like the bomb diggity or whatever, but I've always and maybe that's hereditary from my mom. I've always been able to write. Not always the best to express myself, because sometimes people don't know how to take me. Um, I'm a big metaphoric person and stuff, but I also have a warped sense of humor a lot.
Um, but I have this thing where I like to make people laugh. And I feel that if I have somebody laughing, then at least I know for that one moment that they're laughing, they're not hurting. And even if I can give them that one moment of not hurting, that maybe they can actually get a breath and breathe. And that's kind of my philosophy on that. But anyway, I'm going to continue reading. Um, Other psychological effects of depression include loss of interest in previously enjoyable activities and hobbies, harder time concentrating on your tasks, feeling frustrated, restless, or irritable without any apparent reason, persistent anxiety or sadness that not necessarily connected to a specific event, feeling helpless, vulnerable, guilty, or even worthless, have a pessimistic or hopeful outlook on your life, difficulty with decision making. I can relate to these. When to seek immediate help. Like I said, this is always easier said than done because when you're in a different state of mind, your mind is not um, thinking rational, if you will. So what you may think at a moment when you're not having a moment, as opposed to what you're thinking when you are having a moment, are not the same way. So that's why I said it. Sometimes it's best to have it um, prepared um, plan, if you will, on how to handle um, those aspects of your life in your moments prior to, than as opposed to trying to um, hope for the best at the moment. Because if you don't have a game plan, unfortunately, a lot of times that's when your emotions get the best of you, and it can be deadly. It can be deadly. So, but there are a lot of organizations and people that you can reach out to, and if at all possible, um, if you're blessed enough to have somebody that you can go to talk that you trust and confide in. Unfortunately, not everybody has that. And I, for one, am that person. So I do have a very close friend of mine that I do talk to a lot, but there's a lot of things obviously that's happened to me that I have not shared with her. And it's not that I don't trust her, because I do. But when you have spent your whole life um, feeling um, abused and mistreated and made fun of, and your own self worth has been questioned, your mentality is questioned, your whole purpose of being alive is questioned, it's difficult to have faith in feeling your worth, feeling you're worth it. And then you have difficulty going to somebody, or you might feel embarrassed or feel prejudged because of other people that have judged you, um, or have made you feel guilty for having emotions. Because some people, like I know where I've tried to express my emotions, they would automatically turn around on them, think, it's not about you. What about my feelings? What about my wants, my needs, and blah blah blah. And I'm not looking to belittle theirs, but when the whole conversation started off with I needed to talk to somebody, then it should have been about my feelings, my emotions, and what I needed, because that was the whole purpose of the conversation to begin with. But then it got to the point where it would end up a big, huge argument. So you just get to the point where you just don't even bother. So when you get like this, it's hard to go to somebody. But if you are blessed enough to be able to overcome that and have somebody to go to, please by all means, um, lifeline that resource. Also, to 988 is the suicide helpline prevention center. I talk about that in all of my podcasts. I try to anyway. They are very skilled professionals that can also direct you professionally. I personally have never called them, but I do know that they are out there and that is what they do. So, when to seek immediate help? Treating depression is advisable in every case, but it becomes a priority if you think about hurting yourself or others, have suicidal thoughts or fantasies, don't have the energy or the will to fulfill your duties, like taking care of your children or going to work or, living, feel your symptoms are getting worse. Sometimes, though, you have a difficulty acknowledging some levels of that. Like when I was going through what I was going through, and my daughter was taking care of me. Um, and if I'm honest with myself, if I really owned it, and which I do, um, being and this is where I go with being honest with yourself. Being honest with myself, I admit to myself I was in no position to be uh, doing anything. I was in no position for anything. I was not in a position to be a mom. I was not in a position to be a girlfriend or a wife or a friend or a child or anything. I was not in the right frame of mind position for that responsibility. I could not even comprehend or take care of myself as a human being of my own well being and entity. So the other stuff in itself, I was not in any position to be. And if you are considering self harm, suicide, you're not alone. Help is available right now. Um, and it says the suicide prevention hotline. If you cannot do 988, the phone number is 800-273-8255. You can text HOME, HOME, to the crisis text line at 741-741. You can text HAND, HAND, to the National Crisis Text Line for the Deaf at 839-863. And you can also visit Teen Line online. Is depression a disability? For some, depression can be a debilitating mental health condition. It can make it difficult for you to get out of bed in the morning or have a productive and fulfilling day. You can learn more about how to claim your depression. Um, to claim disability depression, let me restart that line again. You can learn more about how to claim depression disability if you find that it is overtaking your ability to work and function in the work environment. ADA resources. For help receiving financial assistance for depression, visit usa.gov. If you believe that you or someone you know is being discriminated against at work over a depression diagnosis, you can file an ADA complaint with the U.S. Department of Justice. Um, can the effects of depression be reversed? Depression is fully manageable and treatable, and recovery is possible. If you experience untreated depression for a long time, some effects may not be reversed. For example, chronic inflammation in your body might have already caused some physical changes. This is not always the case, though. Some effects and symptoms of depression can be fully reversed. Seeking the help of a health professional might help diminish the effects of depression on your body. It can also help you manage your current symptoms and prevent further occurrences. And I kind of disagree on some of this. I disagree that your depression symptoms can be fully reversed because it's always going to be a part of you. It's always going to affect you, and you're always going to have some sort of triggers. And working through those triggers is key point. So you're never going to get fully back to quote unquote you, but that's where you have to be honest with yourself and note that you're never going to always be the same person you was prior to whatever moment you're in, because that moment is going to affect you one way or another and alter you in some way that is going to choose your next moment. So it's never going to be reversed. In fact, it might be amplified. It might be devastating, but it also might be a way of regrouping, regrowth, um, and finding yourself all over again for the first time. And I always say like the person I was before my trauma in my life. I will never be that person again. That person more or less died, and one metaphorically speaking. I would never be that person that I was during my trauma, my massive, massive trauma. um, but everything that I have endured in my life, and every person that has crossed my path in one way or another, would have been negative or positive, has made me, molded me, shaped me, however you want to word it, into the person I am at this moment in time that you hear in your ear. This is me today, this moment. At this point in time, this is me. And I have been through hell and high waters to get to this woman that I am right now. And I am learning to be honest with myself about that. Because my whole life that I was, everything I worked for, I have 3 degrees, I owned my own home, I have my life together, the list goes on and on and on. And I went to living in my van for 2.5 years, lost everything I owned, lost my home I owned, lost all of my belongings, all my kids' belongings. I lost my children, I lost my grandchildren, I lost myself. Um, I lost me, I lost my identity, I lost my life. Um, I felt like I was dead and not buried, and I couldn't breathe. I was suffocating on my own life. And I would say, living can suck the life right out of you. And now I'm to the point where I remind myself, literally remind myself to breathe. I have to breathe through it. But I have to remember to slow it down, or I'm going to hyperventilate and I'm going to be more overwhelmed. So I have to calm myself and breathe myself through it without being unrealistic and trying to manipulate my own well-being through it. So I say be honest with yourself, because if you're not, you're going to manipulate yourself. And that may sound funny to some people, because you're like, how can I manipulate my own self? But you can. If you're not honest with your own self and you are trying to tiptoe around things, or try to be unrealistic, or trying to maneuver things and reword things or contradict things for your own um, benefit, if you will, and you're not being honest with yourself, you're manipulating yourself. And if you're manipulating yourself, you're not going to get nowhere. You're going to be exactly like everybody else, and everything else has made you feel. Don't be that person. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, I that can be deadly. That can straight up be deadly. And you don't deserve that. It's one thing to own it. It's another thing to honestly remember that just because you own it doesn't mean that it's yours to continue to carry. Sometimes the load that you carry is not always your own, but how it affects you is what matters. And that's what you also need to be honest with on yourself. Some burdens, some heaviness, some mental well being and lack thereof, um, and even physical attributes of yours that you have endured through your case that you're going through, or whatever you've been through, are not always your own doing. But the results and the repercussions of it and the effects of it are yours to continue to carry. And that's what gets heavy. When you carry other things on you that are not your own, but yet you feel them, that they end up becoming a part of your own identity. And then you don't even know who it is that you're looking at. You don't know if you're looking at yourself, or you're looking at whatever society has made you be and become. So you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to learn how to respect yourself. But at the same time, you need to understand the best you can that it's okay if you don't always understand. And maybe that sounds talking in circles, but if you really think about the way you feel in those moments, that gets overwhelming. And you don't understand why you feel the way you do. Why is this happening to me? Why do I feel this way? Why do I think like this? Why are they treating me this way? Why do I, and the list goes on and on and on. But it's okay not to understand it all the time. You don't always know why you feel the way you do. What's important is the fact that you feel the way that you do. Regardless of how you got there, you're there. So be honest with yourself and acknowledge, while I don't know how I got here, I'm at this point. So if I'm at this point now, what am I going to do now to remedy it, counteract it, whatever it is that you want to call it? Take control of it. Don't let it control you. Control your breathing. Don't let your breathing control you and suffocate you. Because not all moments have another moment. And that is what's scary when you're in that mental state of mind that you're in at that particular scenario and time and moment. And I say moments because it is a moment. People say, "Oh, I had a bad day." And maybe that's true. Maybe that's the way they look at it. I say, "You have a bad moment. Turn your bad moment around and you have a better day. Have a change of scenery. Have a different change something in that moment to turn it around for you and make it a more doable, better moment so you can have another better moment. Because if you don't, your moments eventually are going to be so overwhelming and consuming that your moments will turn into forever, eternity. And nobody deserves to be there. You don't deserve to be there. Okay. Let's continue reading. I'm very passionate about this subject because this is who I am. And my podcasts have been an outlet for me. And I always say, I don't get any money out of this. I don't, I don't. I don't even know how that even works. I do this because I am trying to make a difference with everybody else and myself. Even if I help one person in this world, podcast by podcast, or word for word, or even just something in there that they can take out of it that helps them, then that is all that matters. Even if it's just myself. And I've said it before, it's a great outlet, it's a great therapy thing. Start you a podcast if you need to. Start you some way to get your voice out there, but also to talking about things and being realistic and honest with yourself as you do it. It has been very therapeutic for myself. So just a suggestion. Um, so this paper goes on. How is depression treated? Um, there are different types of depression that may require specific treatment. In general, side effects of depression can be treated with medication. Antidepressants are a common form of treatment for depression. Consider discussing the side effects of depression medicine with your health, not your hair care, healthcare team. I mean, hey, go get your hair done. Health hair care. Everybody likes to have their hair done. Well, I mean, unless you don't have any, but um, then get your. That is not going to even sound right if I even finish that sentence. I'm sorry. Oh, that would. I stopped myself on that one. Um, hmm, my son. Goodness, my son. I used to shave his head, and I would tell him, "Go in there and brush your hair." And he's like, "I don't have no hair." I said, "Go brush your hair anyway. It massages your head and your hair follicles. It massages your head. So even if you're bald, go comb your hair. Go massage your head." Anyway, I went there. I don't mean it that way, but
Whatever works for you, I guess. Relieve your anxiety. Get it on out. Anyway, moving on. Therapy. We all need therapy. I need therapy. I'm in therapy. Okay, anyway. I amused myself. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry because this is me. I'm not apologizing for me. And I've learned that. I am trying to teach myself not to belittle myself and dumb myself down for anybody. And it's not always the easiest route to go. But also too I try to be respectful because not everybody is into my crude humor. But sometimes some things are, in my opinion, some things are just freaking hilariously funny. Or whatever, gets a giggle. And I'd rather you guys laugh and get a giggle than be crying. So, unless it's happy tears. But therapy. Counseling for people with depression is often built on evidence based approaches like interpersonal therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and mindfulness based cognitive therapy, if I can talk, brain stimulation therapy. This type of therapy may include electroconclusive therapy, uh, nerve stimulation, or repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation. It might help you cope with some of the chronic effects of depression. I used to clean crime scenes for a living, and we did a lot of suicides, a lot of suicides. And we did this one suicide. And I talked this, I think, about one of my other podcasts. There was a gentleman that lived in another state, and he got a rental car, and he moved to Indiana. This is where I'm at, and got an apartment. He moved away from his mother. Got an apartment. He didn't even unpack his belongings. Everything was still in a box and labeled. He had all of his insurance papers laid out, all of his will laid out. He had um, his last wishes he had laid out. Um, I looked at my employee and I said, "This breaks my heart. This guy was a very considerate, well planned suicidal victim." Um, and he had a stimulator um, in his bedroom by his bed, for his head, his brain stimulator, cranial, and his notes and his journaling and stuff that he did was so heartbreaking. But he had moved away from his mother and got this apartment because it was his premeditated suicide plan. That's how much he didn't want to live no more. He moved across state lines with um, a rental car, rented an apartment, had not even lived there a month. Then I don't even think he lived there but a couple weeks, if that, um, because he didn't want his mom to walk in to find him. He didn't want to do that to his mom. So he moved across state lines, got an apartment, didn't even bother unboxing, um, called the police, told them what he was going to do, told them that the front door was unlocked and just to come in. And they found him on the floor by his couch, and the front door was unlocked. And that's a thing. And that's how deep it can get. That's not a just get over it scenario. This is how deep depression goes. And it goes sometimes even farther than that. But this man, this human being, this son of a woman that he loved so much that he moved himself across state lines so his mother would not walk in and find him dead because he lived with his mom. It's a real thing. You don't just get over that. So when somebody tells you, "Oh, you're depressed, you need to get over that. You need to get out of bed," you know what? They need to be counting their blessings that they don't feel that level of emotion. Because unless you look that abyss in the eye, you don't understand that level of emotion. So please do not judge what you don't know. because it's easier to have an opinion on something that you have no repercussions on, no consequences for, and really honestly does not have anything to do with your direct well-being of breathing life into your body of your soul as a person that is going through it. Because at the end of it all, they're the ones laying in that casket, and you're the one mourning them and wishing that you would have known what to do, or have remorse or regrets, or saying you never would have guessed it, when in all fact that person probably did try to reach out to you in one way or another. Or maybe they didn't, because sometimes there are no signs. But do not be judgmental on what you don't know and understand. I always say if people were less judgmental and more understanding, this world would be a greater place. But we're also hell bent on drama and being drama than anything else. And that's sad. It's really sad, in my opinion. Taking care of yourself. Coping with the effects of depression sometimes begins with small lifestyle adjustments. This could complement the effects or the efforts of traditional treatment. There are some things that you can do in your daily life to help you or someone close to you better manage this condition. Some care, blah, blah, learn how to talk. Sorry. Some self care tips for depression include move more often. Consider adding a few minutes of exercising and activity in your daily routine. Staying active will help you feel better in time. Exercise is great for depression. At least that's what I've always been told. Follow a nutritious, rich diet. People who follow diets rich in fruits and vegetables carry a lower chance of developing depression. Keep connected with friends and relatives. Again, this is easier said than done. This could include spending some time on the phone, video calls, or having a cup of coffee together. Um, I know I've had people tell me before, I tried calling you, um, or call me back, or you didn't call me back, or, I invited you, but you didn't show, whatever. Um, it's not always that easy. When you're secluded and you're isolated and when you're in your own cocoon, per se, reaching out and staying connected to life, let alone family and friends, um, is a life sentence all in itself. And that's sincere. Open up. If possible, talk about your feelings and thoughts with someone you trust, which I said that earlier. This might be challenging, but explaining your symptoms to other people might help them provide you the support you need. For instance, this podcast. Um, Me talking about this and all of my podcasts, I'm very candid, I'm very open, I don't sugarcoat nothing. Um, and I've even broke down crying in quite a few of my podcasts. If you haven't already checked them out, please do so because I mean, it's realistic, it's real, and it is. Maybe it might also be something that can help you, but at the same time, too, don't ever feel like you can't reach out to me and be there for me as well. I am always open to listening, interacting, and being a part of um, helping, even if it's just myself. And I'm trying to get used to saying that because I have always let go of myself to hold on to other people. And I'm learning to teach myself to remember I'm worth holding on to too. Because while I was holding everybody up, I was falling. And nobody was reaching down to grab me. But nobody knew to. Or they were so tired and going through their own stuff, they didn't have the strength to. Either way, I was falling. And for whatever reason, um, I was caught. And um, here I am now. So, be realistic with your expectations. This is what I was talking about earlier. Be honest with yourself. It says this not only goes for your personal and professional life, but also for your treatment. Because if you're not honest with yourself, nothing else is gonna work. It's not gonna work. Your treatment's gonna work. Your mental state of mind's not gonna work. Everything is not gonna work. if you're not honest with yourself internally. Doesn't mean you need to sit down and talk to everybody and spill your guts out to somebody and be honest that way and repent and, count your sins and your blessings, or whatever, not count your blessings. But, you don't need to repent for every single breath you've taken in your life to the world. You need to um, be honest with yourself as you go, not necessarily all at once. But that doesn't mean that somebody else needs to force your hand to make you own something. Because if you don't do it on your own and in your own way, then it's not going to be real. It's going to be fabricated based off of what somebody has conjured you or manipulated you or redirected you or whatever has made you feel. And then it's because of it's an action based off of somebody else's. And so you're in no different position than what you were to begin with. And unless it's your decision and your time and your way, in effect of being realistically honest with yourself, but owning the moment. But if you go and do it based off somebody force feeding you on it, you're going to choke. You're going to choke on it. Um, it's just like, for instance, somebody in recovery. Unless that is your absolute decision in your mental state of mind, then it's not going to be a solid decision. And then your chances of succeeding are going to be very, very hard to hurdle for you. Not for somebody else, for you. And I'm not saying it doesn't directly affect some people because everybody's affected when you're somebody you love. But when it comes to your own individual life, your breathing, your well being, your physical attributes, you as a person, you, that is where the cocoon is. And you cannot flourish if you don't, if you only do it based off of somebody else making you. Because you need to put, that's a part of growing. That's a part of teaching yourself and learning um, to love yourself again. It's self worth. It's self acknowledgement, but it's also self growth, self love, self everything. It's about yourself. And that's what it comes down to. So be realistic with yourself. And if you can't accomplish it and you fall, or maybe not fall, but you stumble, that's a part of learning, growing, and trying. Sometimes you're trying. That's where you get the trying, and trying to try. But don't use it as an excuse either, because then you're not being realistic with yourself and being honest. Learn more about depression. Understanding this condition is key to living with it. Set goals. Setting daily or weekly goals are meaningful to that. And let me start that sentence over again. I just butchered that. I'm put words in there that weren't even there. Set goals. Got that word. 2 words. Setting daily or weekly goals that are meaningful to you might help. Well, I don't know why that was such a hard sentence. A goal could be as simple as calling a friend, walking to your local park, or spending time outdoors every day. And now I say this because I was listening to somebody, I forget what it was, but um, they were saying, the dishes kept looking at me. And it was overwhelming. And I couldn't tackle them. And I could relate because I'm very big on the kitchen being clean. Um, I clean the counters and stuff. And I used to not be able to go to bed without doing the dishes. I mean, I'd be up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing dishes. But since I've been taking care of my mom and have been going through my regrowth of my mental life as well as everything else, the dishes are very overwhelming to me because um, I can't always handle it because it's too much. Because I got so much I'm doing and it's trying to prioritize things. But I have since looked at the dishes and like, you're going to be there tomorrow. And if I feel like doing you tomorrow, I will. Or I'm going to put you in the dishwasher. Either one, so I don't have to look at you, or two, the dishwasher can wash you. But I don't always like using the dishwasher. Or sometimes I do both because it depends how many dishes are in there. But then I'm like, the only person that's going to bother is me because nobody else is going to see him in that sink. My mom doesn't see him. She's in her room and she's blind. She's not going to see him. And nobody comes over. So nobody else is going to see him. And if they do say something, I'll be like, well, I don't know. It'd be really nice to have some help around here, but I don't have none. It's just me, myself, and I. And I do this 24/7. Do you really want to open up that door? So that's not going to be an option. So then I've come to the point of saying to myself, the only person that's going to bother is me. And if it bothers me, I'm going to have to work through it. And if the only way of working through it is to do the dishes, then that's how I'll work through it. If not, then I will turn the light out and I will go in the other room and try not to go back to the kitchen. Or I will continue to say, I'll wash you tomorrow. Or I'll wash you tomorrow. Or maybe later today. Or when every single piece of silverware is dirty in the house, I might think of it more then. Now, mind you, sometimes it's been that bad, and sometimes it's not. But I'm also OCD, so it eats at me. And I live in my mom's house. So my way of life and my way of living and my things that I have in order and my um, things that I'm used to, I've had to readjust and adjust to my mom's way of life because my mom's way of life has to be her way of life because for one, this is her house, and two, she's blind and has to have things consistent. So I've had to adjust myself. Plus, on top of that, I have a bed in the living room, which sleep on or whatever, and my stuff is scattered everywhere. Um, it's in boxes, it's in storage, it's in the garage, it's in her camper, it's in my camper, it's in the attic. I mean, because I don't have a lot, I'm trying to rebuild my life. Um, Most of it's my crafting stuff where I've been crafting because I don't have nowhere to put it right now. Um, and that's overwhelming to me. It's a really big overwhelming. And I just did a podcast on adjustment disorder. And I tell you what, that's a real thing because that's me 100%. It's a me thing 100%. And my mom as well. Because when you're blind, you have to do a lot of adjustments. And it, excuse me, it is a thing. Um, but it's sometimes it's overwhelming. And then you add that to everything else. And then your anxiety starts to build. And sometimes it's that simple of a trigger that gets you. At least it does for me. Next steps. We're going to wrap this up here so because we're at an hour and 17. Next steps. The effects of depression can be physical or mental. Effects and symptoms can be managed with the help of mental health professional. When treatment is sought, it can be possible to improve your quality of life. Um, if you or someone you love is living with depression, here are some resources. American Psychiatric Association, American Psychological Association, Anxiety and Depression Association of America, Association of Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies. I don't know why that word's so hard for me to say. National Alliance of Mental Illness, National Institute of Mental Health, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and Project AIR. And this all came off of psychcentral.com, minus my own input. Um, but all jokes aside, and I'm not joking right now, but anyway, metaphorically, hypothetically, however you want to word it, whatever word suits you. Um, all jokes aside, depression is no joke. I have severe manic depression. My insurance company have deemed me medically fragile um, because it has taken a toll on me. It's not something you just get over. And if it's not intervened in an appropriate, safe, realistic, and healthy manner, it could be the death of me. And I am fighting like hell for my life now. And I am pretty damn proud of myself. I am not cured per se, if you want to quote unquote. I will never be cured. But as long as I'm on this side of the ground and I really am doing what I can in a realistic manner of being honest with myself, then that's something to be proud of. And I am. But I will say this. When I say be realistic with yourself and be honest with yourself, you also have to understand that when your mental state of mind is not in its logical state of mind per se, being honest with yourself and realistic with yourself is a whole different level at that point. And that's where you need to have a game plan prior to that if possible. Because sometimes being the stronger part of you is not always the easiest thing to do. And sometimes it is easier said than done, and sometimes it's not even talked about. It's just done. So please, if you are fighting with your head, remember you're a winner and you do matter. And this life, this world, is a better place with you in it. Please do not give up. Fight for yourself, but don't fight yourself. And 988 is the suicide prevention hotline. Also, too, feel free to reach out to me if you need to. I will do my best to help you as many ways as I can. There are people that care, there are people that understand, and there is a person right now in your ear, which is me, by the way, that understands that emotion very well. And I've got the scars inside and out to prove it. But I'm not going to compare my scars to yours, but I will try to help heal them if I can, if I need to. And, or I can help you to find ways where you can learn to help to heal yours as well. Sometimes the biggest healing mechanisms I have found very therapeutically is to remember that while you need to help yourself and be there for yourself, helping others is very, very life saving for all parties involved. So just keep that in mind. And I pray that you find a way to not go the other way. If you have taken your time out to listen to me today, like I always say, your life, your time in your life is the most precious, valuable thing in your life that you will ever have that you can never get back. And if you have taken your time out to dedicate it listening to me from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that and thank you because that is a part of your life that you're willing to share with me. And that to me is priceless. And I am very blessed to have you in my life. And if you have any suggestions or anything, please feel free to create a comment or anything you need to share. Also, too, I'm working on eventually having guest speakers. So if that's something you think you would like to be a part of, please reach out to me. And I'm also open to any type of suggestions on subjects to talk about. So on that note, I will let everybody go. And I do hope that everybody has a safe and blessed evening. Again, this is Dee, and you are listening to my podcast, Let Me Clear My Throat. Have a safe and blessed night. Bye.